Welcome to Trichy Truths, the podcast where we deep dive into the real underlying causes of trichotillomania. I'm Laura, a clinical nutritionist and founder of Trichy Nutrition, and I'm here to help you uncover the hidden connections between your body, mind, and the hair pulling cycle. In each episode, we're going to explore the root causes for your hair pulling behaviours, from nutrient deficiencies and gut health imbalances to stress, hormones, and a lot more, because Trich is never just a habit, there's always a bigger story behind it. If you're ready for insights, strategies, and support that go beyond surface level solutions, you're in the right place. Let's get started. In this podcast, we are going to be exploring the effects of sugar and carbohydrates on hair pulling urges. We're going to investigate some different ways that sugar can cause imbalances in the body and how this might be affecting your mental health status and your urges to pull your hair. We'll also go through some practical steps so that you can start now reducing the amount of sugar you are consuming. So here's what we need to know first. Before delving into the body's effects of sugar, let's first understand what sugar is. So sugar is a carbohydrate. Yep, a carbohydrate. So our three main macronutrients in our diet are fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. Sugar falls under this carbohydrate banner. So what are the different types of sugar? So different types are glucose, so straight glucose. We've got fructose, which comes from fruit. We've got sucrose, which is table sugar, which we naturally find in sugarcane. And then we've also got lactose, which is your dairy sugar. So sugar is, in its basic form, is a simple carbohydrate. That's what we call it. So sugar is what is added to a lot of our foods, such as like your candy, we call it lollies in Australia, desserts, your processed foods, and your soda, which we call soft drink in Australia. So just to be clear. So when we're reading packaged foods, you might see the breakdowns of like your fats, your protein, and your carbs and your sugar. The grams of sugar listed on those packaged foods usually includes like those natural sugars from fruit or milk, but also those added sugars. So what are the different types of carbohydrates? So we've got sugar, which we've already just been talking about. We've also got starches and we've also got fiber. Now, something that we need to understand is that all of these types of carbohydrates are converted into glucose into our body. So now that we know that sugar is a type of carbohydrate and glucose is what all carbohydrates are converted into, let's now focus on glucose and how we use this in our body, because this is super, super important. So glucose is the main type of sugar in the blood, and it's the major source of energy for our body cells. So glucose comes from the foods we eat, but we also can actually make it from other substances. So this is a process that happens through the liver, and we can create this glucose from other substances such as amino acids. We can make it from byproducts from fats, and what happens is the liver converts into glucose when the glycogen stores are really low. So when our body needs energy, what happens and the blood glucose drops, the liver has this stored glycogen. It's almost like backup glucose, so it calls upon those stores and it creates energy for us. So several hormones, including insulin, help to control glucose in the blood. So how does insulin work? So let's start from the moment you eat carbohydrates or sugar. So the moment we consume carbs or sugar, our body starts to break it down already using the saliva in our mouth. So even before it leaves your mouth, we're already helping to break down those sugars into glucose. It then travels through your digestive tract where it's absorbed into your bloodstream as glucose. This raises your blood sugar level, which then signals your pancreas to release insulin. So what happens then? Insulin then binds to receptors on cell surfaces, which triggers a process that basically moves glucose from the bloodstream and into your body's cells. So such as your liver cells, your muscles, and fat cells. So once inside these cells though, glucose is used immediately for energy and just our usual body functions. So basically, insulin is helping to move glucose out of the blood and into cells, which helps to prevent blood sugar levels from getting too high, which is what we call hyperglycemia. So you may or may not know about conditions such as type 1 and type 2 diabetes. This is where the pancreas is unable to make insulin or not able to make enough. And without this insulin, glucose remains trapped in the bloodstream and unable to enter the cells to be used by our bodies for energy. This can lead to symptoms of fatigue. Many diabetes patients have to take synthetic forms of insulin, which helps their bodies utilize the glucose properly. So now that we know that insulin is a hormone that tells our cells to absorb glucose, let's now talk about simple sugars, so simple carbohydrates. You may have heard them be referred to as refined carbohydrates. So these are the simple sugars that can cause a whole host of symptoms. So let's see what foods they're in first. So these simple carbohydrates or refined carbohydrates are found in foods and drinks like soda, cakes, pies, those sort of baked goods, a lot of junk food, your candy, that sort of thing. It makes you feel energized as your blood sugar rise, but what happens is it ultimately leads to a big crash in your sugar levels, leaving you feeling sluggish. So because of these simple carbohydrates tend to be absorbed in your bloodstream really fast, this causes a real big spike in those insulin levels, and this can be problematic over a period of time. So after a high sugar meal or snack, your body will release this large amount of insulin, which helps to bring that blood sugar back down. But what happens then is it can cause those sugar levels to drop below the normal range, which is what we call hypoglycemia. So not hypo. So this is when your blood sugar levels are crashing. So it's these highs and lows of blood sugar that can cause all sorts of crash symptoms that you may or may not have, been affected by before. So let's go through some of these symptoms because I think they relate quite well to what we go through with hair pulling urges. So, and then we're going to talk about those links as well. So some of the symptoms that we might have is irritability and anxiety. So these blood sugar ups and downs are definitely going to affect your mood. We can also see shakiness or the jitters. So this is really common with low blood sugar. We might also experience dizziness or lightheadedness. So this can happen when not enough glucose is reaching the brain. We can also get, and I think a lot of people will find this, is hunger or cravings for more sugar. So your body is signaling that it needs more fuel or more sugar after this crash in sugar. So I think a lot of you may have experienced this before. You'll have this high meal, high sugar, and then, half an hour later, maybe longer, depending on your body, you'll go looking for more because your body wants that high again because it's crashing really low, and that can cause, like I said, that hypoglycemia, and then your body suddenly wanting to find that hit again. And then the last symptom here is concentration or troubles focusing. So I hear a lot of people talk about brain fog. So that can also be a factor when the blood sugar levels are not stable. So we want to see that stable blood sugar. So, and we'll talk about how we're going to try and achieve that stable blood sugar levels in a minute. So now that we know how sugar is used in our body, let's take a little closer look at how this could be affecting your hair pulling urges. So I know it's one of the first foods that I started to notice the hair pulling urges become more frequent or more intense after having sugar. And I know, obviously, I've spoken to a lot of people with Trich, and it's one of the really common foods that I hear of causing these hair pulling urges to increase. So let's have a look at how sugar consumption may be affecting hair pulling behaviours. So there are many links we can make from sugar and carbohydrates to Trich. So some of these include hormone imbalance, the disruption to your gut microbiome, and then of course the mental health effects of sugar spikes and sugar lows that we've just mentioned. So all of these in some way or another will affect hair pulling behaviours, and I'll definitely look at more of these as we start going further into all of these podcast topics. But let's start now with anxiety. So if you're someone who already suffers anxiety, you'll probably find that these sugar highs and lows will likely affect you more. It's not always the case. So if we've got hair pulling, I know a lot of doctors will put the 2 and 2 together, and you'll often get put straight on an anti-anxiety med, even if I think the majority, I think it would be over half of my Trich clients don't even suffer anxiety. So, but I'm just talking about how sugar is a contributor to overall anxiety. So you might find those blood sugar crashes after consuming something really high in sugar, that your mood may become low or your anxiety levels might spike as well. So, and some people that once we get these anxiety spikes, we may get that after effect of hair pulling urges as well. So excessive sugar intake can lead to changes in the brain that can promote anxiety-like behaviours. So there are studies that suggest that high sugar consumption can lead to a decrease in dopamine production, which can obviously negatively affect mood. So you have to consider, when we're looking at hair pulling, a lot of people see it as a bit of a dopamine seeking behavior. So if sugar is disrupting that dopamine pathway and how we're making and using dopamine in the brain, then it's obviously going to affect the hair pulling urges as well. So that's one way that we can look at how sugar is affecting hair pulling. So now we want to look at hormones and how this can also tie in with sugar consumption and your hair pulling. So as most of you might know, chronic stress can increase cortisol levels. So cortisol is a hormone produced by the adrenal glands, and this helps regulate the body's response to stress by increasing glucose levels for energy. It also helps regulate blood pressure, and it's also helpful in controlling inflammation. So when stresses are constant, the flight or fight response remains activated, leading to prolonged high cortisol levels. So these increased cortisol levels can stimulate the liver to produce more glucose, and this increases the brain's use for it. So basically, it's a stress response that provides the body energy. So this means that chronic stress levels can elevate cortisol levels. So it means that those will have sustained high blood sugar all the time. So high levels of cortisol can contribute to insulin resistance. So this is a condition where the body's cells start to not respond properly to insulin. So this can make it a lot harder to lower blood sugar. So definitely if you've got some symptoms of insulin resistance, I would definitely be looking at lowering stress levels somehow. So it can create this vicious cycle where if your stress is helping to raise your blood sugar, and then that high blood sugar is then increasing stress and anxiety. So, and then we go again, the stress and anxiety increases the blood sugar, that high blood sugar increases the stress and anxiety. So it's just going around and around in this vicious cycle. So definitely looking at stress levels when it comes to how your body is utilizing that sugar in the body as well. Okay, so also another way we want to look at gut health. So let's look at how processed foods and sugar, and we're going to look at how they actually eliminate the beneficial bacteria in the human gut. So when we eliminate this good bacteria, we're disrupting the gut's balance. So this imbalance can cause increased cravings for sugar which again, that vicious cycle will further damage the gut. So when your gut is imbalanced, so we call that gut dysbiosis, this can really affect your overall mood and of course your hair pulling urges. So there are several studies that have linked gut dysbiosis to anxiety, depression, and other mental health disorders. So what it suggests is there's a bi-directional relationship between stress, mood, diet, and the gut microbiome. So meaning stress as well as the diet will affect the gut microbiome, which then this gut microbiome imbalance will then affect the stress, mood. Even further, it'll affect how your food choices, So again, it's that vicious cycle. So there's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to leave a link to a research paper inside of the show notes. So if you want to look a little bit deeper into the gut bacteria, sugar, and also how it's affecting mental health. So now that we've talked about what sugar is, how it's utilized in the body, and what's happening inside of your body, and what sort of symptoms we're getting when there's these highs and these lows, let's look at now on some tips. I want to make sure these podcasts have some practical tips for you guys to take away. So obviously most people would know even just lowering your sugar consumption is going to be good for your overall health anyway. But it will definitely have a flow-on effect when it comes to trichotillomania and those hair pulling urges. I know, like I said before, everybody that I've spoken to, I'm pretty sure everybody I've spoken to has said that sugar has affected their hair pulling urges on at least one occasion, if not every time they have sugar, there's an uptick in what's happening with their hair pulling. So it's definitely something to consider. It's something to look at. It's something easy to incorporate into your diet. I know, as we've mentioned in here, having more sugar can create sugar cravings. Having those imbalances in the gut can cause sugar cravings. Without going further into it, but things like your candida infections and your parasites will also affect sugar cravings. So what I recommend, so for practical steps on trying to lower your sugar consumption on an everyday basis is, number one, go slow with some of these changes. So don't just go, right, I'm taking all sugar out of my diet. It's the same as when we go, right, I'm going pull free. You're really just going to be white knuckling what's going on. And, willpower and white knuckling will only take you so far. And I want to take you further than that. So we're going to try first to go slow. Okay, so it's the same as I always sort of think, when someone says, don't think of a pink elephant, and then you suddenly think, you're going to automatically think of a pink elephant inside of your brain. It's the same for sugar. As soon as someone tells you, right, we're not going to do any sugar, straight away, you're going to be like, oh, I really could have this, or I really feel like this. So let's just go off slow. I always start with my clients. I'm always talking about breakfast. So if we have that high protein, high fiber, high fat sort of breakfast, we're looking and not any sugar in any form, it can really set you up for the rest of the day. So I always say to concentrate on breakfast first. So make some simple swaps, whether it be instead of having that cereal or toast with, I know there's a lot of you out there that have your Nutella or your honey. So these are all straight sugars, change over to something else. So, and it might be as something simple as, instead of white bread, going for a whole wheat, whole grain bread. We'll have another podcast all about gluten and what that causes. But for now, let's look at some simple swaps. So we can go from that to that, or we can look at going all away from cereals and breads and maybe looking at getting some eggs in your breakfast. So, and even going one step further and adding some beautiful zucchini or some sort of vegetable, whether it be carrot or mushrooms, something like that, that'll also, add some fiber in there and fill you up. Another one is like a protein shake. I would look at adding some more, whether you've got a nice protein powder or collagen powder or some yogurt, or filling it up, again, think of those vegetables that we can put in there to fill up on that fiber. So when we've got fiber, we're slowing down. So even if there's something in there that's got sugar in it, like a piece of fruit or something inside of it, if we've got that fiber in there as well, we're going to be slowing down the absorption of that sugar. So look at breakfast first. Definitely look at incorporating more proteins and more fiber. So as I've mentioned before, when we're looking at fiber, we're definitely looking at your vegetables and your whole grains, and adding in those protein foods. So whether it be eggs, meat, dairy, that sort of thing, definitely those sort of things are also slowing down that absorption and keeping your blood sugar levels stable. Okay, so they're my top tips for lowering sugar consumption. Again, I would just start out with very small steps, like doing breakfast or cutting out that soda straight off the bat. I don't want you going to low sugar versions. Some of those low sugar versions are a lot worse for you than the actual sugar version, but that could also be an upcoming podcast. So there's a lot of disruptors there that we don't want to get into. So definitely start off slow. I would be looking at, I always sort of think we don't want, when we go completely off sugar, we can also get those symptoms again. So those symptoms that I've already mentioned in today's. So think of it as a detox. If you go from 6 coffees a day down to 0 coffees a day, you're going to get those detox symptoms, and we don't want to create that. So if we've got, if we're suddenly, like, we're having breads and cereals for breakfast, we're having a sandwich at lunch, and we're having pasta at dinner, and suddenly we take all of that out, you're probably going to feel really rubbish. So I would look at just changing one meal first, maybe changing over that soda to a sparkling mineral water, and just start with that for a couple of weeks and see how you feel. So let me know if you've got any questions about this podcast. Thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Trichy Truths. I hope it gave you some clarity and a deeper understanding of the root causes behind trichotillomania. If you'd like to keep learning, you can find me on all of your favourite social media places: Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Here I share tips, client wins, and resources every week. For video content and deeper dives, head over to my Trichy Nutrition YouTube channel. And if you're ready for more personalised support, you can book in for one-on-one sessions or a treatment package with me. Here we will work together to uncover your root causes and build a plan tailored just for you. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and I'll see you next time.